welcome to Ordinary Saints. I am Kira, and I'm here with my new friend Caroline, and we're here to talk a little bit about ordinary saints in the face of the unexpected. So this week we just had a hurricane in Houston. I was away trying to get home. Just got off of a plane. I have ink stains all over my fingers from my pen that exploded on the plane. Drove straight here so that we could talk about your ordinary saints.
Oh my gosh, thank you for being here. So sorry.
I think I was supposed to say that. Thank you for being here.
Oh my gosh.
So today we were going to talk about the ordinary saints that have been with you in your life, and two of those people have been your grandparents. What were their names?
Yeah, their names were Reed and Adelaide. I called them Mom and Dad, but yeah, Reed and Adelaide Farrell, they were the best and were very formative, very important people in my formation, life, and journey.
And you told me that their deaths were the catalyst to your discernment process and kind of discovering your call to ministry. So could you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I was in my junior year of college. It was March of 2020, right before everything shut down. It was the beginning of March, but I was home for spring break, and my grandfather had just been diagnosed with cancer. And so we were my whole family was sort of preparing for that death. Really, since it was like the beginning of February, we were told he maybe had a month left.
So is that quick?
It was really quick, yes. So we were sort of just preparing ourselves for that. My mom and my aunt were at their house making preparations for my grandmother to change bedrooms to kind of be in a different space than the space that she shared with my grandfather. At that point, they had 24-hour care. But as they were doing that, I was sitting out on the porch with my grandmother. She had these two little rocking chairs on her front patio. I was talking about how I was feeling called to the priesthood. I had been since I was 13. She knew that. And I just, I can hear her in my mind right now. She just said, "Caroline, you'll know." She called me Caro. So she said, "Caro, you'll know when it's time." And the next day she passed away really unexpectedly. Wow. And so that was devastating, sort of in its own way, because we were just expecting my grandfather to pass, and then all of a sudden it was my grandmother. And so we had our funeral. My grandfather's dementia was really bad at that point, so he wasn't really sure what was going on. When he was a young professional, he traveled a lot for work, and there was one time where he was gone for 2 weeks, and he came back, and my grandmother said, "We can never do that again. We cannot have 2 weeks apart ever again." And so he said, "Okay, we'll never be apart for more than 2 weeks." And 13 days after her death, he passed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was, it was just one of those, I think, replaying my grandmother saying, you'll know, in the back of my mind, really just put things into perspective for me. I was on track for marketing and had this whole plan lined up and was sort of already on the trajectory of that. And as that was sort of unfolding, I began the discernment process really soon after that, because it was just, God made it really clear to me through her that this was the time. And it just, death puts a lot of things into perspective, but especially when God has been stirring something in your heart and in your soul for such a long time, sometimes it takes something really big to sort of kick things into gear. And that was definitely my experience with that. So something really unexpected, really hard, but just the way that God has a way of really sanctifying suffering. Yeah. And he has absolutely done that for me throughout my life and my discernment process especially.
That's wonderful.
So, yeah.
So I want to back up to, you said this was a call that you first discerned when you were 13, but then you were on this trajectory to do marketing. So were you kind of thinking this is on the back burner, or you weren't totally sure? I know your home parish, while being really supportive of you, was kind of unsure about women in ordained ministry. So how did that all kind of work together for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think sometimes people see the priesthood as that's a helping profession, and it is. But it's also, if you read the rite in the prayer book, it's really about proclaiming the gospel and administering the sacraments. And that was sort of like the moment of clarity that I had, was like this, I do want to help people, but like this is how,
Yeah.
right? So started sort of discerning that when I was 13. I never, I want to be really clear that I absolutely adore my sending parish, and they have been absolutely so supportive of me. Sorry, I'm gonna cry.
That's okay.
Sorry, y'all. They've been
really been there.
Really, really wonderful. In like very unexpected ways.
Yeah. Well, I remember you telling me when you called your rector and said, now I have made this decision. He was 100% on board.
Yeah.
And then he told you to call your bishop, and your bishop was saying, I've been waiting for this call for years.
Yeah.
So you had all of these people in your corner, kind of a living contradiction to some of their confusion about the place of women in ministry.
Yeah.
But it didn't make sense for you. They said, with this woman,
Yes.
she is obviously called to the priesthood, which is an amazing testimony.
Yeah. They've
It
been
makes sense
really
to be
wonderful.
emotional to think about it.
Yeah, they're really great. I love them so much.
So you had originally discerned this call at 13.
Yes.
And then you were preparing for marketing, not for seminary.
Right.
So what caused you to go in that direction instead of the seminary direction originally?
Right, yeah. So originally, when I sort of started discerning as a kid, I knew that this was probably ultimately what I would end up doing. I felt called to ordained ministry specifically, but I didn't really know if that was going to be as a deacon or as a priest. And either way, I knew that it was something that would happen later in life.
Okay.
I had a lot of people, especially some of my priests, say things like, well, having some lived experience is really helpful. And I really took that to heart. And I had a priest tell me, who I absolutely love, but he told me, don't start discerning this in an official capacity until you can't ignore it anymore. And that was really helpful advice for me. So I got accepted to the University of Florida and was in the journalism school there, studied public relations and marketing, just kind of like communications as a whole. And I really loved it. And so, I started doing that. I had some really cool internships with a bunch of really great organizations like Special Olympics, the Alzheimer's Association. God just kind of kept showing up on this like path that I thought I needed to take, because a lot of, I think my own voice inside of me said that was kind of the safe thing to do, and other voices around me were sort of saying this was the right thing to do. But God just kept showing up and showing me where he was calling me to be. And again, I just think that voice of my grandmother saying, you'll know when it's God and when it's time, has just really stuck with me ever since then.
So you said you felt like you were doing the safe thing, what other people were advising you to do. When you made that shift, no, this is what I'm going to do at this time, other people said this makes sense. Do you feel like it feels comfortable, or does it still feel like you're taking a leap, or it's a risk, or kind of what's your comfort level now?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think I have more confidence now that this is the right path and is what God has been calling me to my whole life. I think there are some worldly factors that cause me some anxiety sometimes. I'm 25.
Yeah.
It's really young for the Episcopal Church to be a priest in the Episcopal Church. Like, I have just my own kind of fears of being a young person, being this young and going into ministry.
What exactly about that is scary to you?
Being the person in charge.
And not being taken serious?
Yeah, a little bit. Being like the young unmarried woman in ministry. But I think that's just kind of my own perception of that. There has been a lot of confirmation just in my life recently that have just shown me that people do trust me and people do want me to be. I mean, being here is a really great example of that.
It's been so interesting getting to hear your story and Ellen's story, and we're going to hear from a few other people in the next few videos. And you can see when you look back how God has been preparing this path for you. And not that you're kind of like circling this target, right? You're getting ever closer. Your history is showing this. So that's just so encouraging to see that. I also just would want to encourage you. I think as you've been experiencing at this church, people can take delight in the difference. So I got to spend, because of the storm, this unexpected grace of spending a few extra days with some of my mentors in Denver. And we were talking about delighting in difference with your spouse. But I can see also the difference that you bring as a young woman in ministry, how much joy people find in that, you know, as they hear you preach and teach and get to know you at this church, but in the churches to come too. So I hope that you can see God's delight through those people too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that is a good segue into the verse that you chose about kind of the love and support that you've experienced with your grandparents and now going ahead.
Yeah.
Would you like to read it
Absolutely,
first?
yes, yeah. This is John 13, verses 34 through 35. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you should also love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another.
That's kind of how you would describe your grandparents.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's just sort of how they lived their lives. Even now, I feel that love, right?
We got to listen to Sarah and Nick's new song, which was just released, will have just been released a few days before this video comes out. And that song is all about coming home and what might keep you from coming home. And I think what's so beautiful in your testimony is that home has always been this safe, comforting place. And so for some people, when they think of God as Father, that is such a triggering, scary, awful thing because they don't have that relationship with their family. But for you, you have this whole witness of the saints in your family that has been this amazing, rich gift that keeps paying off, keeps having this bounty. And I'm really excited to see how the ministry that you get to be a part of in the future will continue to grow that.
Oh, thank you, Kira.
Yeah.
That's really sweet.
So I think that brings us to our close. If you have anything you'd want to add.
Yeah, I'm just really grateful to be here. I'm grateful for this conversation, and I'm grateful for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So join us next week, and we will hear from Sarah, and that's also going to be a great conversation. So thank you.